Welcome you to Spore War After the War, our weekly analysis and retrospective series on the latest episode of the Spore War Actual play hosted here on Dungeon Scrawlers. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Jason Collins. I am a freelance comic book writer, tabletop roleplay game designer, actual play producer, and streamer. And you can find links to my published work, my other actual plays that I've been a part of for Dungeon Scrawlers, including my fantasy comic Thistle, on my link tree at digital_Collins. And for Spore War, the actual play series, I am the producer and editor, and so I am behind the scenes running things every week. But After the War is my chance to get in front of the camera and join the Gamerunner for Spore War, Seneschal.
Hi, everybody.
And so this week, we get to join and say hello to everybody again that's hopefully joining us. But we get to discuss Spore War the Adventure Path, Book 1, Episode 2, as we have now completed the second full episode of the actual Adventure Path series itself. And I guess I'll lead us off, or I'll get you to lead us off. No longer the Guardians of Green Gold. Our players and characters are now the heroes of Green Gold. A fundamental shift in how they are perceived, not just by the residents of Green Gold, not just by the soldiers on the beach of episode 1 that they encountered and aided, but by the nation of Keonan. That they have a reputation that extends beyond the city's borders now, which episode 2, which we just finished a few moments ago, brought into clear focus for them what that means and represents now. And I'm just going to pause there, and I'm going to let you run with that for a moment.
Yeah, it is interesting. I find that the fact that we ran the preludes and they started to establish a reputation in Keonan for the first 10 levels of their career made that an even easier leap. They had already had some roots down in Keonan. Makes it all the more logical for them to be selected by the Queen for their new role, and for the actual government of Keonan, the rulers of Keonan, and the advisors to the Queen to have taken notice of them. So I'm glad, again, always vindicated every time that we ran those preludes. And I hope they're entertaining to watch too. But for the players and for me as the game runner, invaluable. But yeah, they're changed now. They can no longer be anonymous. They can no longer just decide, yeah, I'm going to be involved in this quest or that quest. They are now, there are expectations of their conduct, and that's going to change things going forward.
It really is, and it was fully realized in this episode as they went on to use the term loosely, a new battlefield, a new source of potential both reward and conflict at the same time. And as they stepped onto a much larger stage in the nation of Keonan than just the streets of Green Gold, and attracted the attention of the nobility, the elves of Keonan at the highest level, based on their actions in episode 1, based on what they did in service of Green Gold, what they did in defense of the nation of Keonan, and what they did in defense of the ideals of the Queen of Keonan, and what her hope and aspirations are for the city of Green Gold, and what that city represents to her and to her rule, and to what she wants the rest of Golarion to view Keonan as. That is some high level, heavy stuff that I don't know that all the players maybe fully took it as deep as I just did in terms of examining what that means. They're all pretty sharp. I think if they paused for a moment, they would certainly get there. But I just, you're so focused on the who's inviting us, where are we going right now? Like, those immediate moments are kind of preoccupying their attention right now, rightfully so. But the the outcome, the not just the recognition and reward, but now the responsibility that comes with being the heroes of Green Gold. Because hero can be a pretty big title. It can be loaded with a lot of expectations. It can be undeserved at times, and it can also just be dismissive and meaningless. That, oh, someone's a hero for being brave on this one day. They now represent the Queen's aspirations for the next generation of Elves of Keonan, and how the rest of Galarian will see them for that. And they got sort of voluntold to come to court.
Absolutely.
To tell their story, but even in doing so, even in celebration of what they'd achieved, both the nobility themselves, but also the Queen, still has their own, objectives in mind, and views the heroes of Green Gold (quotation marks) as either an important or invaluable piece of those goals, or an obstacle to them.
That's right. I love the way the Adventure Path charts this, in terms of really immediately into the action, and then immediately into the Queen's attention, and then into her plans. There is in the background material that, of course, the players don't have access to in the Adventure Path book, details about her motivations and the way that she's changed the Elven homeland from one of insular xenophobia to more openness. And it was just so easy to attach part of that explanation to make it all the more credible, as to why the Queen would pick these people rather than people she's already accustomed to working with. These people are an eclectic group, various backgrounds and archetypes, who exactly extol the virtues that the Queen is arguing for. It was perfect for that. But yeah, the reality is this group, because I wrote the preludes with this in mind, and was emphasizing, the conflict between the more traditional elves and those who welcomed the Queen's open initiatives. It didn't need to be explained to the players. They got immediately what was going on and why they were doomed to be selected for service, essentially.
I want to talk about that for a moment. I want to talk about sort of that expectation, and we're not going to say that you, of course, rewrote parts of the Adventure Path, but you expanded upon it, or deepened it in places where they didn't maybe have a lot of detail, as often the Adventure Paths do. They'll give you a surface level, accounting of what this scene or chapter represents, and then move on. And maybe it's left to you as the game runner to fill in the motivations for those NPCs, and do a little bit of the world building of an established setting like Galarian for the benefit of the players. And I want to talk about that for a moment, because I want to talk about how much you maybe have changed that, just to give audience members watching and for the show, but also game masters themselves and for the home table, how they can do that. But I want to talk about something that we talked about before that, which we, I think, recorded this as part of it. It may or may not end up in the episode itself. We may do it as extra content, or as a tag along. Maybe this will be another one of these things we tag on to the end of after the war, based on where it makes sense to fit it in. But you had a discussion with the players about what being now level 11 represents. What level 11 represents in the sort of the stature of adventurers, to use that term broadly, and the rarefied air that you sort of occupy at that level, even though it's only halfway to 20, it is a much more select group of individuals that sort of achieve a level of that type. The wealth that, of course, comes along with that, the gains and sort of the spoils, but also the recognition and the sort of the demands of your name. If you cherish your reputation, assuming you're not playing characters that don't give a damn about how they're viewed, but that reputation, good or bad, will follow you, and people will expect things from you. Sometimes they will ask, and sometimes they will just demand that you do something for them. talk for a minute for the game masters that are listening, people that maybe don't get that opportunity. And we've talked about this at our home table, the rare opportunity to play into those higher levels and sustain a campaign over those higher levels for a longer term, to really be able to explore that. Talk about that for a moment, and then we'll come back and we'll tie it into what it represents for this story.
Yeah, I mean, it is only in recent years that I felt really comfortable running high level adventures, because it is more challenging to keep track of what your players can accomplish, and also uh, every opponent is much more complicated on their stat sheet, and it's, there's so many options available to the players to avoid combats by teleportation or other things. It changes everything in terms of running games, but Pathfinder 2e does a great job of doing that. Going back to what you said at the first, I like the idea that the world contains mostly level 1 to 3 people. And I think Pathfinder 2e plays with that a little bit, and you can make, as a GM, NPCs who might be an 8th level butcher who's really skilled at making cuts of meat from carcasses, and that's fine. But I still ascribe to the idea from older editions of the game that player characters who reach 5th level are rare. Player characters who reach 10th level are sort of the Lord level. That's from the first edition of Dungeons and Dragons. That was the idea. That's when you start getting a fortress that you defend and a base of operations and that sort of thing. And some of that has stuck in the game system, at least in terms of my assumptions, and I think some of the mechanics. So yeah, the rarefied air is exactly right. It is at that point that you are more exceptional than most of the people out there. You're the people that locals will turn to in times of trouble because you have capabilities, and also reputationally and wealth-wise, it does make a difference. Running a game at that level requires a little bit of adjustment, but it was actually easier the first few times that I did it than I thought, because the player characters are there to help tell the story too, and they know their characters, or they should. They can develop that knowledge, and so really, as a GM in those circumstances, you're still just trying to tell the same kind of story, just from a different perspective, because suddenly the player characters are worried about their image and their reputation. They're not anonymous anymore. It changes the culture and the socializing and the combats. It changes everything, but not as much as you might think.
I've thought about this as I mature as a gamer, to use that word, because role-playing games, of course, represent a power fantasy, that you get a chance to inhabit this larger-than-life character who can do extraordinary things, and go on amazing adventures with no risk to yourself personally to face those same challenges, right? But the power fantasy is not just about the fact that you get to play this larger-than-life character who's very extraordinary and can do these things. As I've matured as a gamer, as I've gotten older, as my perspective as a gamer changes, the things that I value as in terms of rewards, or the things that I value in terms of what an older character can do for me, is how can I affect positive change in the world around me? Yeah. That's something that we've explored heavily at our home table to great effect, but we've taken it to a degree much farther than I have ever had in any campaigns I've ever played in all the years that I've played role-playing games, which are many, many, many. And one more year as of today, of course. But I've never had a chance to do that to the level that we have, to really explore a political side of the game, to really explore the environmental side of the game. Like, if you control a swath of land, what do you do with that land? If you control the influence over a small town or a village, or maybe it's a city, or maybe it's a village that's grown into a city by virtue of the opportunities that you've created there and done that. Depending on your table, depending on what motivates your table, they may just want to move on to the next adventure and be the roving band of high-level adventurers for hire, or just pursuing their own ambitions. I know there's a lost dungeon over here. I know there's a temple down here. I know there's a city that I want to go visit here, in search of a magic item, whatever it is, and that could be the only motivation that they're after. But for game masters who are willing to stretch themselves a bit, or have not had a chance to do those types of games before, it represents a tremendous opportunity that, yeah, the players are coming in looking for high-level magic item shopping, but in doing so, the lord of the city, the mayor of the town, the wizard that runs the shop, or that supplies the shop with the magic that the small shopkeep is running, is actually got a wizard patron that runs things behind the scene, comes knocking because they've heard of you, and you get to use that reputation just by virtue of the previous adventures you've had up to this point. And add a little bit of a twist to the game, and it doesn't have to be part of the published adventure that you're running. It can be in addition to that, or to supplement that, or maybe it's your own homebrew that you're doing in between the published adventures that you're running.
Yeah, I'm trying to import some of that magic into this game that we had in our home game with respect to the Age of Ashes campaign, where, by 12th level, our player characters were having a disruptive impact on Breachill and Citadel Altieren in Isger, to the point where, like, local politics was dominated, the local economy was dominated, and it started getting the notice of Isger and Cheliax, and some concerns arose with respect to over thriving, and drawing too much attention to ourselves. And we did a number of experiments in that home game. It's winding to a close right now, but um, I think the collaborative alternating GM issue was a rousing success. We'll talk about that perhaps later. But the high level play, where you give the player characters something to care about, a region that they have influence and are respected in, and suddenly they start to care about the people who care about them. And it gives, as opposed to that mercenary band that will just go from part of Galarian to part of Galarian, if everyone in Green Gold loves the player characters and values them, and the player characters feel at home there in this game, that gives me so many devious tools to make them care about threats that I brandish as the GM, that it just makes things more impactful, and the stakes are higher.
Lex playing as Banda in their intro for tonight's game reminded everybody that Banda loves animals and is okay with people sometimes, but is getting to be more okay with people as time goes on. I thought that was a great observation, because that's not something that Lex, the player, has ever really shared about Banda as an evolution of their worldview,
Perfect.
by virtue of the experiences they've been having up to this point, right?
Yeah. And I can hardly wait to put Squeaker in Valthorn Manor.
That's
The
right.
the giant porcupine. Absolutely, and these are great players. Like, they do not forget who their characters are. They keep. If I forget something that's important to them, they'll remind me. They've been great to play with. No drama, just fantastic. I did want to come back to something you said earlier about what I add and what I take away in this session,
Mm-hmm.
because I have done some carnage to the adventure path, I'm sure. Um, I apologize for nothing. It is, I had a lot of fun with it. The players did too. But from a position of adventure path design, the writers contemplate that. They put a lot of details in the large blocks of text that only the GM reads. And then they say expressly I think in the next section, if the players are getting antsy, you need to just get to the combat. Here's what you do. Not
Nice.
enjoying the politics, if they're not engaging with the NPCs, here's what you do. You just bump them to level 12 and you get them into the fight.
Well, that's excellent. Because they don't, even in some of the Age of Ashes books, they weren't that explicit about
That's right.
here's how you can bypass this work that we've written on and prepared for you. Here's how you can just move past it if that's the case. I think that's excellent game design too.
It's excellent game design.
Yeah, yeah.
And so all this block of text, you can use whatever it is valuable to enrich their interactions, because you as a GM have read it. But if you as a GM find it boring, you can also just simplify it.
Yeah.
Exfil and infill, adding things and taking things away, is just part of the editorial process that is running a game as the game runner, as the game master. You can, for example, I added in some stuff today. We'll talk about that later, I think, um, with respect to the interactions with the Queen.
Of course.
Uh, I took a little bit out, but these player characters really were engaged in what was going on, and so I used quite a bit of that content, and to good effect. The players engaged with it and made it entertaining. I did nothing. I just told them what happened. But the exfil and infill is contemplated, and when you're taking stuff out, to keep things moving to what the players are enjoying, that's as important as when you add things in because it's missing something they want to engage with. And it's just part of the editorial process, in my view.
You're already starting to answer the next question I was going to ask, or to steer the conversation back, of course, to the part about how much you, both with the preludes leading up in terms of expanding upon things that you wanted to have more fleshed out, but also what you maybe changed or not again use the word rewritten, but just either expanded or set aside in the adventure path itself for the game masters that are out there that maybe haven't been confident enough to sort of do those whole rewrites, or stay away from adventure paths published material because they just find it easier to do their own homebrew and not have to worry about customizing something for their home table if they know their group already. What do you think has sort of maybe been most effective about that, or is there anything that or do you feel like you've had a couple of sessions now of the adventure path itself? Do you feel like that rhythm is kind of settling in, that you feel creatively you've made the right choices because you've gotten to the next place in the module that you want to get to, for the player's perspective, they haven't missed anything that would be part of the story?
Yeah, I had originally contemplated that we might be able to do this book in 3 episodes if we cut things down, but the reality is it's going to be probably 5 episodes for book 1.
There it is. There it is.
Well, I mean, I've never done an actual play before.
Absolutely.
I'm going to forgive myself for that. The players are on board. That's fine.
No, absolutely.
We're good. But it is before the session started today, I said basically I don't want to cut the role-playing aspects short.
That's right.
I don't want to rush through that and make it seem forced and cut you off mid. Like I just that would not have worked. Because the players are good, I want to revel in these moments, and I think they enjoyed it quite a bit. So I've forgotten the question.
I was just getting you to dig in a little bit, just in terms of how much you may have changed or omitted, or just kind of
right.
like you said, slimmed down or expanded upon. But do you feel like it's still gotten you to the place in the story that you needed to be? And do you feel like you're still giving them the majority of the Spore War experience without having to stop at every rest stop along the way?
I haven't skipped anything really from the original content. I have expedited only a few things. We're right on track at I think for 5 episodes instead of 3. I am going to take out, there's some exploration stuff later on. I don't want to spoil anything, but I am going to simplify that for sure.
Sure.
Otherwise, and even next session, you could turn it into 8 sessions of information gathering and other subtleties.
Yeah. There's a big scene that I assume would be a full episode in of itself. I can't remember having not read the story in as much detail as you have. But I'm sure even 2 full episodes could probably take up the next sort of event that takes place, depending on how in the weeds you want to get. But in my mind, also the opportunity, the role play opportunity, and the chance to do some of that world building I was referring to, where you could do sidebars with some of these other NPCs that are going to be coming into the story, that you could go much richer and much deeper in terms of that.
Yeah, and I'm going to try and do it all in 1 episode.
Very good. Very good. No technical challenges. We'll start on time, and everything will be golden. Absolutely.
Yep, absolutely.
Fair enough. So, talking about richer, talking about expanding, let's talk about the scene this week. Try and avoid too many spoilers for anybody that has not watched the episode for Book 1, Episode 2. But the player
watch it first.
Yeah,
we're going to spoil stuff.
Exactly right. The heroes of Green Gold are invited to court in Ianara, in the nation of Keonan, at the behest of the queen herself. No small request, and I think the weight of that was suitably felt by the player characters, and even by the players to a degree. But once there was a little setup and so forth. But once they got into the main scene, you gave them, the story, of course, gave them some pretty significant one-on-one time with the monarch of Keonan.
Yes, which is weird from a modern context, but and when I remember when I was reading the module the first time, thinking it's a little strange that she's just decided that these local heroes are now going to be her emissaries. And so I took some liberties with the story and the preludes to set it up. I tried through the preludes to make it more credible that they would have a broader reputation.
Yeah,
And that's part of the reason why I involved nobility in some of the adversaries that they dealt with at the time.
totally.
Because that, when I read it, struck me as being not implausible, but just a bit difficult, a bit of a gear change that a little too abrupt. And so, for my liking, and so what I did was try to give it some other justifications as well. And it's right there in the book, in the sense that, as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, she's not just looking to solve a problem. She's also got this other agenda of opening up Kyonin to outsiders.
Hmm.
And so this eclectic group of adventurers, if she can help them succeed on something more prominent in terms of accomplishments, then it further justifies what she's done over the last decades.
None of whom come from a noble house, none of whom carry a name of renown or significance in the nation, and some of whom don't even have deep heritage ties to the nation itself. And so, yeah,
There's a dwarf in the party.
as examples of the yeah, that shift and that openness of the
Yep.
nation, could you not ask for a better group who have still demonstrated bravery and charity and selflessness and just all of the attributes that you'd want of people that are gonna carry your banner.
That's right. So that's in the book, although it's not laid out as this is why she's chosen them. I think there's enough material there documenting her perspective on these things that an intuitive GM will leverage that.
Tying it back really quickly just for a moment before we move on to the discussion about what the weight of being at level 11 means, is the way the adventure path written, do you think that the writers used that level 11 heft to simply assume this is why these would be the characters they get, because they represent that sort of top echelon of capable individuals in the local area?
Not sure. I haven't read it.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. Uh, I I think that I think that's part of it. Um, but I do think the adventure path is not on its face easy to run if you're going into the deep lore and politics.
Yeah.
Where it shines is giving you the option to skip it,
Hmm.
either because the GM isn't confident running it or because the players aren't interested.
And with a good table, not that a table that wants to bypass the politics isn't a good table, with an engaged table that can thrive under that
Yeah.
would seek out those scenes because they can be much more rare at the home table sometimes, and they can certainly sometimes be rare in terms of actual plays where maybe the content is more focused on the adventure, more focused on the combat, or just focused on having a good time and having fun. But with a group like we have here for Spore War, the chance to say you're going to get to go to court, and we start by asking you, what are you going to wear? And by the time we get there, it's going to be, what are you going to say? And they leaned into that 100%, that they were like, they were holding things back, not wanting to offend or not wanting to say the wrong thing at the wrong time. They were not wanting to speak for fear of not being the right spokesman for the group. But you did a great job, and I feel like the players responded to that, because it's like you're giving somebody who's thirsty a glass of water to drink. They just gulped it down right away because you're giving them a chance to engage with that, and you had different NPCs representing these different viewpoints or different perspectives of the nation and how they were viewing the characters. And you've got this noble woman taking a direct interest in who you are and what you've accomplished with your life up to this point, even as by the end of it we realize there is an ulterior motive that she's got in play, not because she's callous and doesn't care about them, but because she still has an objective to achieve. But she needed to win them over and do that in an authentic way. That role playing in the court, I thought, was a great way to do that. And I thought that was just really well received by the players. Did
Yeah.
you feel that in the moment when you're running the scene?
Oh yeah, I thought it was going really well in terms of because I mean, just to be clear, I'm on 4 hours sleep. I had a full day at a very stressful job, and I came into this exhausted today. And I had about an hour to refresh my memory on the personages, and while I was getting Roll20 and everything else set up, this was a launch into a pressure cooker for me. Um, so when it was going well, I I was really appreciative, and I was appreciative of the moments that the players gave me where they were running with it and role playing, and I was able to quickly consult with my notes. The astute viewer will see my eyes are down. I'm like, okay, what's going on next? You take those moments when you can. As much as I
Yeah,
would have enjoyed watching their
yeah.
reactions, I needed that time. So yeah, I think that the moments where they were interacting with the queen and her cousin were great. The players really did engage with that, and in a way that was both moving the story forward and authentic to their characters.
Talking about this from a topic of two perspectives: one, the story perspective; two, the actual play production perspective of providing and running content that is agreeable to your players and that covers or doesn't include the specific types of content that they want to see. But there was a little bit of, I'll just use the simple word, flirting between the queen and some of the player characters during the scene tonight.
I don't know why you would have suggest anything so scandalous as that. Obviously, the queen would not be able to flirt with mere adventurers at her court.
I stand corrected, but I'll continue with my train of thought in this thought experiment of something that absolutely did
Right,
not
right. We'll
happen.
talk about it in hypotheticals. Okay.
Exactly. And so there was both a out of character discussion by you, a safety discussion, just to make sure from the players at the start of the session to make sure that they were reminded that some of this content can be in the story, coming back to their ads, veils, and bans that we had sort of covered off with them at the very, very beginning of this journey, just to make
Yes.
sure that everybody was good. And you got consent from players to make sure that they were okay with who wanted to be included in that and who wanted to partake of that, which was excellent. But then it was also really great from a story perspective. And I feel like this is one of those moments where, unless you can tell me the adventure path is really, really blatant about spelling that out, I feel like you might have expanded more or nuanced maybe what they had written into the adventure path in terms of the queen's behavior.
Nothing like that is in the adventure path. That is where I did carnage, just because it amused me.
Okay,
And because I
okay,
wanted it to be a moment, the whole building up that she, the queen, has an interest in being an adventurer that she could never fulfill and read adventure stories and things like that. That was all mine.
yeah, yeah,
And it was all just to explain why she would be so enthusiastic in talking to this group of heroes of green gold and why she would find them fascinating. And why, in particular, she would find Banda fascinating.
absolutely. The exact opposite journey as an individual and career path, to use lack of a better word, and just sort of life stage that they're at. And if Banda represents in the queen's mind a romantic idea of the life of an adventurer would be and what that freedom would taste like in terms of your lifestyle and so forth, yeah, Banda represents all of the things that somebody who's in a very rigid, strict, hierarchical, you know uh, etiquette driven society would yearn for. And I thought that was a great scene in that, and I feel like it was very illuminating for the players to see that, because their player characters were reacting and they were almost a little bit taken aback, like why would she possibly care, you're the queen. But it was great because I think the players recognized that moment, and each of them had individual reactions to that as well.
It would not have been credible except for the pieces that the breadcrumbs I put out there that the player characters recognized, which is, oh, she's already said that she's admires adventure, has always wanted to adventure, couldn't. And then, some of the conversation after we cut at the end of the episode that is still in the recording, but not, after we talked about where the players were getting into what they were thinking about that, because of course they were very excited about that aspect of things. And of course, I denied that any of it was outside of their imagination. Um, I think that went really well. and it also made the queen a human being rather than just an NPC quest giver.
Absolutely. And that was my takeaway as well. Is it was a really good moment of making the queen as much a real character as anyone else that they've met along the way so far,
Yeah.
and the importance that she has as a quest giver, as a somebody who moves the plot along for you, but for all of them, they're going to be now changed going forward by knowing that whatever else they do, whatever else happens, the queen herself is watching them, or watching them through the eyes of her most trusted agents, to follow their progress and to see what they achieve.
I'm hoping it makes a lot of the stuff that happens later way more credible and way more emotionally invested for the players. Um, and also, we're like, I think we're going to get some comedy out of this. I think we're going to get some emotional intensity. I don't want to turn it into a romance novel, and that's part of, one of the veils that we have to deal with is not everyone wants to run a Baldur's Gate type
That's right.
game where it's,
That's right.
romance is really part of that game. But at the same time, it is also part of human interaction and explains motivations. And so, as a storyteller, I don't want to exclude that from the realm of
Yeah.
things that we hint at, and maybe we'll veil it quite a bit. I don't want to make it an every session type of thing.
No.
But if things need to be lightened because they're fighting against horrific demons, it gives me a great tool to
Yeah.
introduce a moment of emotional impact or levity.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So I think that's great, and I hope that any game masters that have not included some of those things in their own home games, or would like the opportunity to do so in the future, if they do watch the episode and can sort of take inspiration from that, I hope that's something that helps them, broaden their story, their own storytelling capabilities for that reason.
Yeah. There's been a couple of our home games where we've implemented that to ridiculous effect in a sense that, we're a bunch of, um, you know, guys who are, over 30 and, um, you know, using it partly just to introduce a moment of it's not all cutting people up and looting the bodies. It does introduce something, and sometimes it's an element of comedy, and sometimes it's an element of just impact.
Yeah.
And you can't overdo it. It's like anything else. If you overdo it, its power is lost. But I'm not shy about including it from time to time.
No, and going back to my comment about maturing as a gamer over the years, 100%, it was never something that was part of my high school games. It was certainly never something part of my games in my early 20s. A little bit here or there, there'd be little moments of that, but it was often, loved ones who become under threat from the enemy, and it was part of your backstory, but it certainly wasn't something that was explored in the sessions themselves. But now, understanding it as we expand into political parts of the games, and uh, you know building relationships with a town or a city and the individual NPCs that could simply be a stock NPC from the book, or something that came out of an adventure path with a single paragraph of description and motivation, but taking those, having them become a recurring character, having them re-enter that player character's life again in the future, and then tying certain importance to the locale, let's say, to who they are, you get to bring them back, and they would usually, as we run these games, especially with sharing the GM chair, we tend to be able to pick up this type of NPC would 100% be gravitated to this one individual of the group, and then you can roll with that. And the home table, we're very fortunate that, yeah, as much as we play it for laughs sometimes, and use it as that moment of levity which is needed, everybody still leans into it, even if it's for fun. But everybody also, I think, understands that it adds another layer to the story that wouldn't be there if we were just, like you said, doing the hack and slash, running the adventure, collecting the loot, and moving on. It's so much better. And
Yeah.
we now have our home table has a bunch of characters who literally have relationships across the globe of Galarian at this point, and
Yep.
have teleportation magic and magic portals and other things. There's each of us has different people
Absolutely.
that are spread out, not at the home base, but that are not just flings, and not just one event encounters, ongoing deep relationships that are meaningful to those characters.
That's right. And you can't turn it into pornography, and you can't turn it into a romance novel. But sometimes, if you have a gaming table that you really trust and where they know what you're doing, you can threaten to do that in a way that's plausible to make them nervous. And so the romance novel thing is something that I think in our current home game, there's been elements of that where it's like threatened, a veiled threat of I'm going to take this to the point where someone's going to get uncomfortable just as a joke,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
but they know me well enough to know that that's not actually what I'm going to do.
We've been also be able to do things for fun too. That both would be adding an element of what a relationship in a high magic world would be like, with like scrying sensors, and someone's watching you, and you're going to the ball, and you're on a mission. You've got to engage with somebody that's maybe that you're not sure if they're an enemy or an ally, but you have to turn on the charm. But the person back
Oh,
home is keeping
yeah.
tabs on you and is keeping you
That's
honest.
right.
And I've
Yeah,
really enjoyed.
don't date a 15th level wizard, I guess is the lesson there.
I really enjoy those moments too, because it's like, yeah, that's exactly how that would go, and it makes for a lot of fun because we can play it for laughs, but then also say, okay, you know what,
Yeah.
your actions have consequences, and there are people that you've committed a part of your life to. You can't just be callous with that now and just throw it away on a whim. You've got to make sure that you're doing the right things.
Yeah. And the other thing that I think is interesting, we're going pretty far afield with this, but I think this is kind of unique. There's not a lot of content talks about this sort of inclusion. I mean, you can have games with spouses and multi-generational. I know that other actual plays have had, uh, you know, the next generation become part of the game, I think,
Descendants, yeah, yeah.
yeah, it really does add something in terms of the legacy. And part of the role-playing thing is you're creating a legacy for this character if they're getting past a certain level because they're affecting world history and events and saving the world and all that sort of thing. One of my favorite things to do that I haven't used often is to have a villain express romantic interest in one of the player characters because it also really complicates things. Especially if they're not like an immediate combat villain, but someone who's scheming against the party, but is holding, maybe not, they're pulling their punches a little bit because they're a little sweet on one of the player characters. That
That's
kind
right.
of thing can be like you can have endless fun with this if you're creative and are comfortable with the people you're gaming with, without again getting overly descriptive
Hmm.
of anything. You don't want to be describing it, moments of intimacy. You don't want to be turning this into anything more than 2% of the entire game experience. But as that 2%, it's a spice that adds something.
That's right. You touched on something a moment ago about your changing world events around you, and we talked near the beginning of the conversation about high level play and the rare opportunity to have rare high level play that's extended, that you get to carry on the campaign for an extended period doing that, so it's not just a one and done. You talked about you only started to feel comfortable in the last few years running at higher levels as a game master. I'm in the exact same boat, but for me especially, and I've talked with you about this, and I've tried to introduce this a little bit to the home table from time to time, and I wanted to tie it back into Spore War and ask you how you feel it works within this story about these higher level characters and the fact that they can have this outsized influence on the world around them. They're the immediate town, the immediate country or nation, or through teleportation magic and magic portals, you can be traveling to multiple nations and having impacts in multiple places. Especially as this higher level rarefied air character, that there's not many people who are at your level or in terms of your capabilities at this point. I've struggled with that as a game master because I'm like now you can you can topple nations, and
Yes.
you can raise them up, and that should either inspire people or scare the hell out of them, and they may react to that negatively, right? And that's something that I've struggled with because I felt like I didn't adequately have the range of experience as a game master to know the right way to do that. And there is no right way to do it when it's your home game. But I wanted to do it justice, I guess is the way I'm trying to say this.
Yeah.
That I wanted to do it in a way that felt legitimate and meaningful, and that you can't just strap on a sword and go and invade the next country because they're acting out against you. But at the same time, they might want to disrupt your borders. They might want to really eat away or nibble away at your realm of influence, and do so in a way that is reflected in sort of how large wars get started and things of that nature, where
Yeah.
a few hasty or wrong actions can negatively change the outcome of a relationship between two nations, and that can become a world-changing event in that regard. And so that's something that I still struggle with now in terms of wanting to include those elements without letting it overwhelm the direction of the game that we're doing about these individual stories, but wanting to try and showcase how that influence that these characters wield can be impacting other parts of the setting as well. And I guess I'll narrow our conversation back down to keep it on Spore War. How do you feel like that's reflected in the story or coming up, or these characters literally just broke bread with the Queen of Keonan? Do you think that changes anything for them in terms of their influence in other parts of the story?
From what I recall, having read this a few months ago, I think that during the course of the campaign, these player characters will remain focused on the adversaries and challenges they're faced with, and only to a lesser extent, to the extent that they exert influence, there is a mechanic in the game for using points gained from successes to influence events they're not directly involved in.
Right.
And so their influence grows that way, but it's all focused on the Spore War.
Mm-hmm.
Their victories give them these points that they can then use, and we'll go through that. I'm going to include all of that because I think it's interesting, and it's a different mechanic that I think makes this game unique. But in terms of if they prevail, I think it will be hard to deny that at 20th level, as having been the heroes of the Spore War, that they would not be extremely influential in Keonan especially, but across Golarion. They will be some of the most significant heroes of their time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's for any adventure path that goes to 20th level. And I think there are real world historical examples of that, where one person takes a nation in a direction that it otherwise wouldn't. Alexander the Great, Genghis Khan, conquerors come to mind the most, but sometimes they're world builders like Hammurabi, who wrote a code of laws that changed the way people interact. They don't always have to be conquerors, or I think Hammurabi had his fair share of conflicts too. Every king or emperor does, I suppose. But in terms of what Alexander the Great is famous for, he made it all the way to India from Greece and died there. But would Macedonia or Greece have gone to that extent without his influence? No,
Yeah.
I don't think there's any argument. So I sort of see player characters as the same. If you defeat a CR-25 red dragon that occasionally rampages over multiple nations around the Five Kings Mountains in Isger, at the border of Isger, it's going to dramatically affect local areas that are going to be safer, and it's going to dramatically impact the reputation of the person who did it. So yes, there might be people who might be mistrustful if that person builds up an empire, but who's going to choose to take them on militarily
Mm-hmm.
or in direct confrontation? I don't know. I think it's interesting. I think people of that kind of power level, especially in a game where 20th level means something tangible in terms of power and capabilities, I think it's credible that people might be like, I guess they have Isger now.
Going back to your first edition Dungeons and Dragons analogy, right? When you got to 20th level, if you did, which was even a rarer feat back in that system, you were singular. There was often only one of you at that level for the world. So yeah, there's rarefied air, and then there's the absolute best in the world in terms of what you're doing. So as you're getting into the high teens, it's not quite so unique in that regard, but it is certainly different, and it is an interesting power fantasy, to come back to what I was talking about before, to explore that, or to simply use it to further your gain as a conqueror would, which is exactly what you can do as one choice. But I find it is far more challenging for both the game master and the player to think about how that story changes and how you're going to now influence the world around you, or at least think about the consequences of what your actions have on the world around you as well. And that I just find that makes for really rich role playing for me, because again, that's a type of role playing game experience that in going on now 40 years of playing games, rarely have I gotten to touch on that, and now I'm getting to do it or experience it in multiple different types of games now. And it's fascinating to me because it's still challenging my perceptions of what I want a character to be and what I want the final chapter of that character's story to look and sound like as we close on the end game at our home table. And I'm guarantee that these players are certainly starting to think about, if the Queen knows my name now, right? How is that going to shape the decisions that I make going forward? And how is that going to change the story that I thought I had in mind for this character when I started Spore War versus where that story is going to go now?
Yeah, I think they're spot on in that those players are more worried about what this means in terms of consequences and obligations than they are about thinking about any benefits of having the Queens here.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, any closing thoughts for this episode of After the War?
Yeah, don't let me off on my biggest blunder of the night. That intro that I botched 3 times and still didn't get right.
They've already watched the episode. That intro is smooth as can be. There was only one take, and it went all the way through. I'm sure they had no notion of it. What you're talking about?
I do not believe that even the power of editing will save that intro. I do not believe it for a second. I'm tempted to re-record it. We can. What's that? That Simpsons episode where the what's the dog's name? The character that gets added and then edited out. With just a crude edit that he goes off to space. And
I want to say Squeaky, but Squeakers is the porcupine. It's an S name. Oh, that's terrible.
I can't remember the name.
Failing my pop culture lore, but yeah.
There's it's gonna be an edit like that. I'm pretty sure. I might die in the intro.
Just dances up the screen as he goes up the screen.
That's right.
That's right. Yeah.
Again, my fatigue and just I got a little bit of an adrenaline shot later, and I think we pulled it off. But, whew.
That's you're right. I was going to let you off the hook. I wasn't going to pull back the actual play production curtain and talk about rough intros. We had so many more interesting things to talk about in this episode for sure. But yes, it was the casualty of doing something as a recorded event, and as you say, coming into it when you don't have the proper rest and the proper preparation, and I can't sometimes even get my closing promo for my own workout without misspelling it or mispronouncing it along the way. So yeah, it's just part of the deal that comes with it. So
I'm proud of how bad it was. Almost
it was good. I was like, do I stop recording? No, I'm just gonna let this run. It'll be a really good outtake maybe one day that we'll do for the blooper reel. But
no.
But yeah, I just let the recording run. That way you could just keep restarting as many times as you needed until you got there. So
I didn't get there though. I just gave up.
And then
let's get this episode started.
And as the audience has watched, it'll be like your head suddenly jolting on the screen with each cut, as I just had to cut it.
Individual letters of words.
Yeah. That's exactly what I'll just be putting in a subtext of like just the translation from stuttering to English, and it'll just this is what he's trying to say.
And then could you please add death by 1,000 cuts?
Yeah. Absolutely.
It was bad. I know it was bad. Put in the comments how bad it was.
That's right. Okay, everybody, that brings us to a close of this episode of After the War. Thank you so much for spending some time with us again. We hope you enjoy our analysis and celebration of events that we liked. Hope you got some insight from the questions that we asked about the things and scenes that happened in the game. And we enjoy sharing these moments with you and look forward to the next episode as well. One more time, my name is Jason Collins. I am a freelance comic book writer, tabletop role-playing game designer, actual play producer, and streamer. You can find links to my work, the actual plays that I've been involved with, and my fantasy comic Thistle on my link tree at digital_Collins.
And thank you, Jason, for all your efforts on this. My name's Matt, Seneschal, you can call me. And I would just like to say sincerely to those watching, thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Put some comments downstairs below the line if you want to encourage us to keep producing content. This is my first time. That kind of encouragement goes a long way. If you want to insult my opening on this episode that we just recorded, I would welcome that. Tell me how bad it was. And if you know people who'd be interested, please let them know. Thanks.
Sharing these stories with us, sharing those with people that you know, people that appreciate actual plays, people that are just tabletop role-playing game fans. That's what these After the War sessions are about. Talking about our experiences running games as well. We really enjoy sharing them with you, and we would really enjoy it if you would share it with others as well. Thanks so much, everybody, and we will see you soon.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks, everyone.